Hello and welcome back to Mr. Miller's Art Room. Today is Color Theory Part 4. We're going to be creating a very large work of art that's going to display 4 different color schemes. And we're going to utilize the color wheel as the basis by which we can discover which color schemes that we're going to use. Now, as a reminder, the word scheme is just a fancy word for saying plan. So you could also say color plan. We are going to start with a fairly large piece of paper, and for some of our smaller friends, we might be doing a slightly smaller version of the same project. But for our purposes, we're going to start with the large piece of paper, and I'm going to show you all the steps. The first step is that we're going to use 4 different color schemes. So we need to divide this piece of paper into 4 different sections. 4 even sections, as even as we can make it. The way that we're going to do that is by folding our paper twice. What I like to do when I fold my paper is I turn it around so that the paper is up and down, otherwise known as vertical. What I'm then going to do is reach all the way to the top, pull the paper down, and what my goal is to get the corner to match the corner and the edge to match the edge. I pull this down, and as soon as it happens, there. Then what I'm going to do is, notice how I have both hands on there, my thumbs are on the paper. Well, I'm going to itsy bitsy spider all the way up to the middle, and I'm going to crease it. A crease is when you make a fold in a piece of paper permanent by squishing it down. Once I pinch the middle, it's pretty safe. All I have to do is go to my right, then I go to my left, and you'll notice if I open up this paper, you're going to see that crease right in the middle. Well, that's great. Now all we need to do is, since my paper is now sideways or horizontal, I'm going to turn it so that it's vertical. Now, this is kind of a tougher part because once this crease is in here, it makes the paper kind of stiff. So what I'm going to do is kind of put my finger just about the middle. It doesn't have to be exact middle, but I'm going to use that to help me curve this paper up, and I want to do the same thing again. I want the corner to match the corner and the edge to match the edge. If it's off just a tiny bit, that's not a big problem because it's not perfect, class. It's art class. Thank you, Mr. Monocle. Now what I'm going to do is kind of itsy bitsy spider all the way up to the middle, push down in the middle, and then slide it out in either direction. I want a pretty good crease on there. Now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and you'll see 1, 2 lines and 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. The next thing I'm going to do is utilize these 3 different tools. I have a pencil, an eraser, and a ruler. The ruler is going to help us create straight lines. The reason that we needed to fold it is because folding it this way makes it very easy for us to understand the middle of this part and the middle of this part of the paper. The eraser is just in case I make a mistake. Now, the pencil is going to act like an anchor.
An anchor, like on a ship?
Yes, Mr. Monocle, on a ship. The ship's anchor goes into the water and hits the ground, and it's very heavy, and it helps keep the boat still in one place in the water.
Yes, well, what's that have to do with the pencil?
Well, the pencil's going to act kind of the same way. We need to make sure that the ruler doesn't move too far out of place, so we'll use the point of the pencil as an anchor.
Yes, well, why don't you give me a show?
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top of this line at the top of the paper, and I'm going to put the pencil point down. Then when I take my ruler, I want it flat down on the bottom side. I'm going to make an L shape with my hand. I'm going to put my hand right about at the center, but I'm not going to press down hard yet. I'm going to take my ruler and set it against the pencil. Now what I'm going to do is, using that anchor point so that the pencil's not moving, it just stays stable because it's always on the line, I'm going to slide this ruler until it touches the line. And that's good enough for me. Then what I'm going to do is hold the pencil up high and pull it toward me. At this juncture, I'm not letting the ruler move. Now it's time for the pencil to move. So I pull the pencil down toward me. It's important that you pull it down toward you because pooling your pencil gives you a lot more strength and control. And then, voila, we have a pencil line. Now I'm going to have to do the same thing on this side, but we have a couple of problems. Problem number one, trying to draw a straight line from the side to side gives us less control. Remember, pulling your pencil towards you gives you more control. Pushing your pencil or pulling it to the side doesn't give you as much control. The other problem is that when the ruler is here, unless I'm directly over top, it's hard to see. And then the other problem is that, the third problem is that this ruler is much shorter than the paper. But here's the solution. Turn your paper to the side. And instead of worrying about the entire length of the paper, we've got this crease mark in the middle, which is hard to see sometimes. Here we go. We got this crease mark in the center. So what I'm going to do is just worry about this section, and then I'll get the other section later. Take your pencil point, set it right on the crease line at the top, make an L shape with your hand, make sure this is light and smooth, make sure your pencil point is down and not moving. Put the ruler against the pencil point so it acts like an anchor so that the ruler can slide back and forth against that point. Then I'm going to slide it until it touches the crease right there. That feels good to me. I'm going to bring a line all the way down here. And then I've got that line on the crease. Now if I want to do the other side, I don't let it hang off the table, which right now underneath of this spot is the paper and it's hanging off the table. I turn this around, take my pencil point, act as an anchor point, open up the L-shaped fingers, rest the ruler against the pencil point, and the ruler should glide smooth all the way until it gets to the line of the crease, and then I pull the pencil point down, and I've got a completed quartered piece of paper. The next step is that I want to create a design. You could either utilize 4 different designs or 1 design. For our purposes, let's stick with 4 different designs. Now, I want these designs to be simple, but I want them to be interesting. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick slightly different shapes for each piece of paper. On this side of the paper, what I'll do, maybe I'll start in the corner and I'll go outward. And I'll make some bubble-like shapes like this. And I'm going to loop around, and I notice I'm going to start at the edge of shape, go to the other edge of the shape and stop. And if I get to the edge of the paper, I'm going to start at the edge of shape and stop when I hit the line of the paper. Don't forget the edges, the outside edges of the paper. That acts as a sort of border as well. So I'm going to fill this entire section up with these shapes. Now there's a situation right here where I start here and I go off the edge of the page, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is pretend to continue to draw even off the page, and when I get to the other side of the page where the drawing would naturally go, then I come back in and finish the curve. And so that's completely acceptable and actually best to do. Now that I've finished this section, I'm going to go over to this section and maybe I'll do a different shape. Maybe I'll do a series of different sized rectangles. Now, one of the tricks about this whole situation is that for what we're going to be doing next, you don't want the shapes to be too big because it's not going to give you very many chances for something interesting. You don't want them too small, like, for instance, you don't want any of these. See how tiny those are? That's not big enough. You want them about, I would say, medium-sized. If they're too big, then you won't get enough shapes in there, and it won't look very interesting. If you make them too small, they'll be extremely difficult to color in. The next one, I'm going to try triangles in a similar fashion. What I'm going to do is I'll make these triangles, start and stop at the edges of the shapes and the edges of the paper border. And I'm going to continue this pattern going all the way through. If you get to the edge of the paper, that's okay. You just let it go off and pretend to continue to draw. The next one, I'm going to try something a little bit different, a little bit more creative, but remember, when it's artwork time, you can make these different choices for yourself. What I'm going to do is a series of hooked curves like this. Maybe it'll come out like this or like this. Basically, you just kind of come up with different rules for yourself. That's what matters, as long as it's interesting to you. Now, I'm going to stop here, pretend to draw the curve, come back in here, and boop. Now, this is kind of high level and difficult to do, so if you want to keep it to something a little bit more basic, that's perfectly fine. We are going to be working on this, and don't forget to flip your paper around and write your name on it. After you're done with this, if we have time, we'll get into the coloring part, but probably this is going to take you for the rest of the class period. The next part is going to be all about choosing our color schemes for each section and coloring it up to make it look like a really fun, beautiful color scheme artwork. Thank you all very much for joining me today, and for Mr. Monocle and I, we say good day.
We said good day.